Imagine you wake up tomorrow morning. Your car is not outside. Overnight, it took someone home. It delivered packages. It charged itself. And it earned money while you slept. That sounds like science fiction. But the real change is even bigger. Because when cars stop needing drivers, they stop being cars. They become a transportation network. I'm John, and this is Simple Speculations. Self-driving cars are usually presented as a better version of Uber. No driver, fewer accidents, maybe a slightly cheaper ride. But I think that is one of the smallest changes they will create, because when you remove the driver, you do not simply improve the car. You change what a car fundamentally is. A car stops being a machine that waits for a human. It becomes an autonomous economic system. It can move people. It can move products. It can reposition itself. It can cooperate with other vehicles. It can earn money while its owner is sleeping. And eventually, it could make distance far less important than it is today. This is no longer a distant science fiction idea. Waymo is already operating fully autonomous rides in several American cities. Tesla has started its robo-taxi rollout and is producing its dedicated cybercab. Tesla has also discussed allowing privately owned vehicles to participate in an autonomous transport network. But what exists today is still fragmented. One company, one fleet, one group of compatible vehicles, one restricted operating area. We do not yet have a generic system that can turn millions of existing vehicles into autonomous vehicles. But I think that will come. And it may not require replacing every car on the road. Some of the first vehicles used in Google's self-driving program were modified Toyota Priuses, normal cars that were already on the road. That does not mean you can install a cheap device in a 2006 Prius tomorrow and safely send it into traffic. You cannot. The vehicle needs cameras, sensors, computers, reliable steering and braking control, backup systems, software, and legal approval. But it proves something important. Autonomy does not necessarily belong only to brand new luxury vehicles. Eventually, it could become a technology layer, something that can be added to many different types of vehicles, just as GPS, smartphones, and internet connectivity were gradually added to almost everything. And when that happens, transportation becomes fundamentally cheaper. The biggest cost of moving a taxi is not always the fuel, it is the human. The driver has to be paid for driving, but also for waiting, for returning without a passenger, for working irregular hours, for being available at night, for accepting the risk of uncertain demand. In ride-hailing, the driver may receive a large percentage of the underlying fare. That money is not pure salary. The driver is also supplying the vehicle, fuel, insurance, maintenance, and depreciation. Removing the driver does not remove every cost. The vehicle still has to be purchased. It still consumes energy. It still needs tires. It still needs cleaning. It still needs insurance, maintenance, charging, remote support, and software. But the most expensive human constraint disappears. And the vehicle can operate far more hours every day. Let's make a simple model. Owning and operating an average new car in the United States costs around 77 cents per mile. That is about 48 cents per kilometer. A New York taximeter charges around $3.50 per moving mile before additional surcharges. That is approximately 2.18 per kilometer. Some optimistic estimates suggest that mature robotaxi networks could eventually operate for around 25 cents per mile. But let's not use the most optimistic number. Let's assume 50 cents per mile, around 31 cents per kilometer. Not today, not during the early rollout, but after the vehicles, insurance, maintenance systems, charging infrastructure, and software reach scale. Imagine you live around 6 miles outside a small town. That is approximately 10 kilometers. There is no train, there is no useful bus. There may not even be a ride-hailing driver available when you need one. Today, you probably need to own a car. Using the full economic cost of a new car, that 6-mile journey costs around $4.60. You may not feel that cost each time you drive. You mostly notice the fuel. But depreciation, insurance, financing, and maintenance are still happening. Using the New York taximeter as a rough comparison, the same journey could cost more than $20 before waiting time, tolls, and other surcharges. A mature robotaxi at 50 cents per mile would cost around $3. In a rural area, it may cost more because the vehicle has to travel to reach you. So perhaps the real price becomes $4, $5, or $6. That may not sound revolutionary compared with driving a car you already own, but you no longer need to purchase that car. You do not need insurance. You do not need maintenance. You do not need a garage. You do not need to pay for parking. And the vehicle remains available if you are elderly, tired, intoxicated, visually impaired, or simply do not want to drive. The revolution is not only the price of the individual journey, it is eliminating the requirement to own the machine. Now imagine two people traveling in roughly the same direction. The autonomous vehicle collects both of them. There may be a small detour, but the cost is now divided between two passengers. Instead of each passenger paying $4 to $6, each may pay $2 or $3. Add a third passenger and the price falls again. This is where autonomous ride sharing becomes fundamentally different from today's public transportation. Today, a bus company has to guess whether enough passengers will use a fixed route at a fixed time. Tomorrow, the route forms itself around the passengers. The network knows where every vehicle is. It knows where every passenger is going. It knows which journeys overlap, and it can continuously reorganize the fleet. You do not wait for enough people to justify a bus route. The software combines compatible journeys as they appear. That could be transformative in suburbs, villages, and rural regions where traditional public transportation is too infrequent to be useful. Now consider a longer daily journey. Here is the question that actually matters. Can a robotaxi make living 30 miles away cheaper than owning a car? Around 30 miles, approximately 49 kilometers. The full economic cost of driving your own new car is around $23. Using the same taxi benchmark, the journey would cost more than $100. A mature autonomous vehicle at 50 cents per mile would cost around $15. Perhaps the passenger pays $20 after empty repositioning, pickup costs, and platform margin. Again, it is not free, but it is cheap enough to change behavior. More importantly, the passenger is no longer driving. Those 30 miles are no longer lost attention. You can work, read, watch something, talk with your family, or sleep. The real breakthrough is not that the car drives itself. It is that your travel time stops being lost time. And sleeping will not be some unusual luxury feature. Self-driving vehicles designed for long journeys will have beds. Of course they will, once nobody has to sit upright behind a steering wheel. Putting a bed inside the vehicle is technically easy. The interior does not need to look like a normal car. It can look like a small private cabin, a bed, a screen, a desk, storage, perhaps even a compact bathroom in larger vehicles. The vehicle becomes a moving room. That changes the meaning of a long journey. This is where autonomous cars begin competing with trains and flights, not because they are faster, but because they remove the inconvenient parts. Imagine traveling 124 miles, around 200 kilometers. Using the New York taxi meter as a theoretical benchmark, that journey would cost around $430 before additional charges. Almost nobody regularly takes that journey by taxi because paying a human driver makes the economics absurd. A mature robotaxi costing 50 cents per mile would cost around $62. Allow for a larger vehicle, a bed, insurance, charging, empty mileage and operator margin, and perhaps the customer pays somewhere between $70 and $100. Now consider a journey of 311 miles, around 500 kilometers. A traditional taxi benchmark reaches almost $100. The robotaxi might cost around $155 at the basic operating estimate, perhaps $170 to $250 for a comfortable private vehicle with a bed. If two passengers share the cabin, the cost per passenger falls further. That begins to compete with trains and short-distance flights. Not necessarily because the vehicle is faster, it may be slower, but speed stops being the only question. Imagine entering an autonomous sleeping vehicle at midnight. You lie down in a real bed. The vehicle travels at an efficient 50 miles per hour, around 80 kilometers per hour. It covers roughly 310 miles or 500 kilometers in just over 6 hours. You arrive shortly after 6 in the morning. You did not travel to a train station. You did not drive to an airport. You did not arrive 2 hours early. You did not pass through security. You did not wait at the gate. You entered the vehicle near your home. You went to sleep, and you woke up at your destination. The vehicle does not have to beat the airplane in maximum speed. It only has to beat the airplane in total inconvenience. Travel time still exists, but lost time largely disappears. But this is still the small version of the idea. The truly strange part is what happens while you are not using the car. Private cars are parked for around 95% of a typical day. One of the most expensive assets most households own spends almost its entire life doing absolutely nothing. And in expensive cities, we pay even more money just to keep it inactive. In New York, parking can easily cost $20, $30 or more for a few hours. In some premium locations, it can become dramatically more expensive. Now imagine that your car can drive itself. You arrive at work. Instead of paying $30 to store the car in Manhattan, the car leaves. It transports another passenger. Then it delivers a package. Then it charges itself. Then it takes someone else across the city, and shortly before you finish working, it returns. You no longer pay to park the car. The car earns money while you are not using it. The question becomes, why would you ever leave it parked? If you insist on bringing your private car into New York, that car may not cost you money during the day. It may make money for you. This is why autonomous driving could finally unlock the unused potential of privately owned cars. People can theoretically rent their cars today, but there is too much friction. You need to exchange keys. The renter has to travel to the car. You have to trust them to return it. You have to coordinate the time. You have to inspect the vehicle. You have to clean it, and you may suddenly need the car while somebody else is using it. Autonomy removes much of that friction. The car travels to the customer. It verifies their identity. It monitors how it is being used. It returns when you request it. It can automatically document damage. It can drive itself to a cleaning center. It can visit a garage for maintenance. It can drive itself to a charger. The owner is no longer renting an object. The owner is adding an autonomous machine to a transportation network. Tesla has discussed bringing unsupervised autonomy to privately owned vehicles, but no company currently offers a generic and proven system that allows almost any ordinary car to safely join a global autonomous network. That is the missing step. When it arrives, millions of depreciating private vehicles could become income-producing infrastructure. Not every owner will want strangers inside their car. That is obvious. There will be privacy concerns, cleaning problems, damage, insurance disputes, and some cars will be too old or unreliable to qualify. But universal participation is not required. Even if only a minority of compatible cars join the network, the available fleet could become enormous. Autonomous vehicles also do not need to behave like isolated human drivers. Human drivers leave large safety gaps because our reaction times are slow and inconsistent. Autonomous vehicles can communicate directly. One car can tell the vehicle behind it that it is braking before the second vehicle can visually detect the brake lights. Vehicles traveling in the same direction can form a digital platoon, a virtual train. They coordinate speed. They maintain shorter gaps. They brake together. They merge together. They choose routes together, and they reduce the aerodynamic resistance experienced by the vehicles behind them. Even without touching, this can reduce energy use, increase road capacity, and reduce traffic waves. But there is a much more powerful possibility. And then there is the idea that sounds ridiculous until you realize autonomy makes it possible. Cars temporarily becoming trains. The vehicles may eventually physically connect. Imagine autonomous passenger pods traveling through local streets independently. When they enter the highway, several pods clip into each other. The connected vehicles now behave like one larger machine. They share aerodynamic protection. They may share battery capacity. They may share motors. They may share braking systems. They may share sensors and computing power. Only the front vehicle needs to cut through the air. The following vehicles use much less energy. A single propulsion unit could potentially move several passenger cabins. Instead of 5 separate vehicles, each carrying their own full battery, motor, sensors, and safety systems, some of that infrastructure could be shared. That could reduce the cost of long-distance travel dramatically. Energy becomes cheaper. Battery requirements become smaller, the vehicles last longer, highway capacity increases, maintenance can be concentrated into standardized modules, and when the connected system approaches a destination, the individual pod disconnects and completes the final few miles alone. This is not what today's vehicle platooning systems do. Today's platoons are digitally connected but physically separate. Physical docking would require new vehicles, shared standards, new safety systems, and perhaps dedicated highway lanes. But autonomy makes the idea possible. Instead of choosing between cars and trains, the cars themselves temporarily become the train, and that could combine the low cost and energy efficiency of rail with the door-to-door flexibility of a private vehicle. No station, no transfer, no timetable, no waiting for hundreds of passengers. Your private cabin joins the larger system when it is economically useful and leaves when your route separates. Once vehicles can move without drivers, the secondary effects may become larger than the original technology. Parking lots lose value. A city no longer needs to store one inactive vehicle beside every office, shopping center, and apartment building. Some parking garages become housing. Some become parks. Some become logistics centers, maintenance hubs, or charging stations. Cars themselves change shape. If nobody needs to face the road, why should every seat face forward? The vehicle can become a bedroom, an office, a meeting room, a mobile medical room, a restaurant booth, or a private cabin inside a larger connected transport system. Passenger and delivery networks begin to merge. A vehicle transports people during commuting hours. It delivers groceries during the afternoon. It moves packages at night. And it takes people home from restaurants in the evening. Children, elderly people, and people with disabilities gain more independence. A person who cannot drive no longer needs another human to sacrifice their time. Insurance also changes. When the software is driving, responsibility begins moving away from the passenger and toward the manufacturer, fleet operator, and software provider. And geography changes. People may be able to live farther from offices, schools, hospitals, and city centers without feeling completely isolated. This connects directly with the housing question. Cities are expensive partly because proximity is valuable. People pay enormous amounts to remain close to jobs, services, and other people. Remote work weakens that requirement digitally. Autonomous transportation could weaken it physically. There is one serious problem, though. Cheap autonomous travel could make traffic worse, not better. When travel becomes cheaper and easier, people may travel much more. Empty vehicles may cruise around instead of parking. Longer commutes may become normal. Traffic could increase rather than disappear. Autonomous vehicles do not repeal geometry. A road can still hold only a limited number of vehicles. Cities may need congestion pricing, road use charges, and strong incentives for sharing and physical platooning. Otherwise, we could replace expensive transportation with cheap transportation and then consume so much of it that the roads become unusable. That does not invalidate the transformation. It means the transformation will need rules. Self-driving cars are not simply cars that drive themselves. That description is like calling the internet a faster postal service. It misses the system that appears around the technology. Autonomy changes the economics of taxis. It changes who needs to own a car. It changes what happens while a car is parked. It changes how vehicles cooperate. It changes the value of travel time. It changes the practical distance between where we live and where we work. It may turn cars from personal possessions into a distributed transportation network. Just over a century ago, speaking instantly with someone on another continent was effectively impossible for an ordinary person. A few decades ago, having a live video call from almost anywhere still sounded futuristic. Today, we use those technologies without thinking. We complain when the connection takes 2 seconds longer than expected. The same thing may happen with transportation. A journey that feels exhausting, expensive, or completely unrealistic today may eventually become something you begin before going to sleep. You enter a vehicle. You lie down in a bed. You close the door. Your vehicle joins other vehicles traveling in the same direction, and you wake up somewhere else. Transportation will become orders of magnitude easier, and when that becomes normal, we will stop thinking about how strange it once sounded. We will take it for granted. And when that happens, remember this video, because the self-driving revolution will be much bigger than you think.